Are you driven by the blues or inspired by a muse? My family and I recently moved from Rexburg, Idaho to Edmond, Oklahoma, which also happens to be the home of Keeley Electronics, the company that makes this pedal, Muse Driver. We're going to get into the sounds that this pedal could make and the cool features that it has. But first, I want to share how I got here. So what is distortion exactly? Literally speaking, distortion is any change to an audio signal. This broad definition would include any effect pedal that you would find on a pedal board, plug-in within a DAW, or any audio device. But most people don't look at distortion this way. They're typically referring to the clipping off of a sine wave. This clipping off literally shaves the peaks and the troughs, which results in a squaring off to 1 degree or another. And this alteration is the change in the waveform that made the clean guitar change into the crazy sustained chaos that made people like Jimmy Page, Jimi Hendrix, and Jack White famous. These icons are revered for the contributions to music that are now just accepted as sonically pleasing and clearly tasteful. But it wasn't always this way. At first, this new sound wasn't immediately embraced. When life offers no handbook, going off past experience and hunches are about all that you could do. It proves to be quite the challenge, however, when these gut feelings make no logical sense. Somehow some of my best decisions, most of them, come about this way. I'm not sure what to think about this, but I try to always keep in mind that I've made mistakes in the past and I'll always continue to falter going forward. It's the human way, and I love it. The same flaws and limitations that characterize the human experience are the very things that breathe life into it. Likewise, the volume limit of a guitar amplifier may be viewed as a flaw or as a feature. This very perspective shift is the thing that brought musicians to view distortion as a legitimate tool of tonal expression, rather than the sound of their gear being abused and broken. Perhaps a limit isn't a limit at all, only a guide to a better alternative. Speaking of better, let's hear my guitar before and after the Muse Driver is engaged.
So I made this little instrumental, and I wanted to show you actually how Muse Driver sounds through drums in particular. It ended up posing as an issue because the Muse Driver is mono, and I wanted to retain the stereo signal of the drums that are recorded. But I was thinking about it, and this limitation actually posed as a kind of a guide, like I said, to a better alternative. I'll show you how. What I did is I duplicated that stereo signal, and I had one of those being just the left side of the signal and one just the right, and I hard panned those left and right. With that, I had to send both of those individually through Muse Driver in order to be able to have both sides affected. And I took the liberty to not just have it be the same settings, the knobs, because if you're trying to create stereo width, oftentimes what will help is to create contrasting tones to fill in the gaps. When we hear the reflections of audio in the room, those our ears don't hear the exact same signal, and because of that, we have this depth, this stereo imaging. This is how the drum sounds before being sent through Muse Driver. And then this is after. So the right side of the drums I had driven heavier. Both are driven pretty heavy and more bright, whereas the left a little less driven and more, I rounded off the tone considerably. Right side. Left side. Together. So in the mix, without Muse Driver, sound like this. the other drums in the mix sounds like this. So with the bass, I actually parallel processed it, having the dry signal go through and then the wet signal go through Muse Driver. And a really good tip for bass to have a saturated tone without losing that low end is to not just saturate the bass, because when you saturate the lower frequencies, it's too much signal to really process, and it just loses the low end. I don't know how else to say it. But if you have a copy of that signal that isn't distorted at the low end, meaning whatever part of that parallel signal that you're saturating, just put a low cut filter on it or a high pass filter so that the saturation is only being affected to the upper mids, the highs and the mids. Yeah, so the bass sounded like this with that blend. So yeah, let's check out the whole thing. Cool.
Following the boutique boom of the 90s, this catalyst continued on into the age of the internet. Information that was once obscured and difficult to find had now become accessible to all. And this goes for much more than effects pedals, for all niches. Small pockets of individuals, once separated by physical space, now merge into a collective mass much greater than the sum of its parts. Connection caused collaboration, which created new circuits crafted by citygoers and cowboys alike. The Muse Driver harkens back to the origins of Robert Keeley's mods. He saw things like bass enhancement switches and home stereo and car stereo systems, and he brought that back into the world of pedals, which is my favorite thing about this pedal, the Muse Driver. The simplicity of flipping on a switch to increase or decrease the low end or change the clipping style of the drive is what I've had most fun with this pedal. With a keen interest in guitar amplifiers and a clear love for all things music, it's no doubt that Robert was simply following his muse when he was driven to fuse these elements of common home and car stereo systems into the functionality of stomp boxes, which I think is cool.
Here, I'm with my girls in our new home, 1,285 miles east, Oklahoma, where we belong. Red roads through clay hills with shaggy cows. Oklahoma, blessed from above. Cowboys crafting circuits, putting pedals that I love. Oklahoma, I might just say, playing records and recording albums every day.